I'm Mike Costello, and I'm here with Dr. Iris Freelander, and today we'd like to talk to you about the still small voice within. Today there's a lot of interest in mind-body-spirit connection, and there's also a lot of interest in spiritual circles in the connection between Eastern and Western philosophy. In New Thought metaphysics, we have for many, many decades explored the opportunities of looking at the melding and the understanding of Eastern and Western spirituality and philosophy and applying it to the practical realities of daily living. The reality and the teaching of the still small voice is one that is foreign to some traditional Christians, isn't it, Iris?
Yes, it is, and it's because we don't give ourselves enough credit that we can think and be our own person. And for centuries, the priests and the equivalent of the priest told people what to do and what to think, and the people couldn't read for centuries, and so people were told. But as we've evolved ever onward and upward, we're more and more into being our own person. And sure, we still go to church and we listen and love the services, but still we have to be our own person and think for ourselves. And that's what the New Thought encourages people to think for themselves and to give some guidelines on how to do that in a positive, practical, fundamental way.
And one of the fundamentals is that the divine presence is within each and every person.
Yeah.
And that divine presence, although it may be outside us, is also, and most importantly, inside us. And it's inside everyone. And so the idea and the thought and teaching is that everyone has resident within them, good, bad, old, young, wherever they're from, has the presence and the power of what we call God, or we name as that which is divine within them. And that reality, that presence, that personage, if we choose, whatever we choose to call it or name it, can and does speak to us and guides and directs us. And in our work, we spend a fair amount of time, especially with people who come new to the teaching, working through the process of introducing techniques like meditation and the silence and quieting, which is new to some people. But that process really opens the awareness of the inner knowing, or the small voice within, doesn't it?
Yes, and it's very essential in most of our lives. And if people who haven't tried meditation would try it, they would see how very calming it is and how very wonderful. I know I've seen people who've said, I've never meditated, I can't do that. And yet, when they try, they see how simple it is. It's always, everything that's worthwhile is really simple, isn't it?
It is.
And so as we do that, we can then attune ourselves to the inner spiritual being, Creator God, or whatever name we put to divinity, but it's all the same. And also, we have higher bodies within ourselves. We're not just a physical body, but we have 7 major bodies, and the spiritual aspect of ourselves connects us totally with Creator God. And when we say God and I are one, indeed, we are one because we are connected in that way. Like an analogy would be an electric generator with all the different things going out from that generator being serviced by the generator, then the people would be that. And it's a wonderful thing to know that we can go home to God at any time. And when we look for that still small voice within, then we find it. And we find peace and happiness and joy and bliss. And we don't let the trials of the world get to us as deeply as if we don't have that anchor.
We also find the guidance to do the things that we need to do. And I think sometimes we take that saying of let go and let God as kind of an end-all, and we say let go and let God guide and direct us to the actions that we should take. So it isn't a matter of folding our hands and being pious and spiritual. It's a matter of attuning ourselves with the divine that resides within us, and then allowing that divinity to not only reside within us, but to guide and direct us. And one of the things that New Thought has taught for 100 years or more now is that the presence and the power of God can be thought of as infinite intelligence, or we sometimes call God divine mind. And divine mind has limitless knowledge. It has the knowledge of all of our needs and all of our solutions to the problems and dilemmas of life. And if we are able to unite our mind with divine mind, our conscious mind with the mind of God, if you will, or the mind of Christ, then we make union with that divine presence. And then, when circumstances and situations present themselves in our lives, we're able to draw not upon our own knowledge and ability, but upon the infinite intelligence of God to guide and direct us in the ways that we should go. And it's important for us to understand that we're not talking about something that takes control of us, nor are we talking about any kind of puppeteering. We're talking about a guiding force that moves us to right thinking and right action and right words and the right outcome for every circumstance and situation in our lives. And that comes from this inner knowing or this still small voice.
Yes, and again, it's a choice. We can make the choice to be still and hear God's voice within us, or we can make the choice to just go helter-skelter through life. And when we've once tried meditation and once tried hearing the voice within, the still small voice within, then we know then the difference. And I would urge anyone to try that if they don't truly, deliberately listen for God's voice, then to try it. Because prayer is talking to God and meditation is listening. And as we listen, we hear ever so much. And furthermore, we can ask questions and we'll get answers to our questions. It happens all the time. And it is such a wonderful thing to know that we do have that infinite resource back of us. We just have to be confident enough that we're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk for a minute about centering. That's a concept that many people aren't familiar with, but Eastern philosophy has employed it for centuries. This need to center ourselves in the presence is to bring about a peaceful state of consciousness and awareness in the midst of all of life's challenges, isn't it?
Yes, and we always talk about breathing as if it's a new thing, but it's, of course, it's not a new thing. But breathing deliberately is sometimes a new thing to certain people. So we need to just really deep breathe for a moment when we do our meditation, or when we attune ourselves, when we center ourselves. Mm-hmm. Just one or two deep breaths will do it, and more might be helpful according to how stressed we are, or tired, or anything like that, according to what we've been doing. But as we do that, we sense our oneness with the divine.
It's a little bit like the old saying that we're told when we get angry is to count to 10. Well,
Yes.
That's just a way of stopping and detaching from the situation, and begin to take a few deep breaths. And we know too that if we're people, we're all stressed at different points in time. So when we're stressed, when we're fearful, when we're angry, if we just stop and take a couple of deep breaths, it really clears our mind, doesn't it?
Exactly. We need to remember to do that all the time. We all need to remember to do it. And then when we're deliberately centering ourselves, it's the same principle. So we breathe deeply, and then if we're where we can, then we go into the silence, to the deep voice, the small, still voice within. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's not so small, but it's always still, and it's always peaceful.
Mm-hmm. And it's always present.
Yes.
And it's always accessible, although often in our lives we don't access it, and we're busy doing other things. The other thing that happens is that our mind is so busy thinking about this and thinking about that. And one of the things that we have to do as we access the still small voices, we need to touch upon the importance of being in the present moment, being in the now, because so often in our minds we spend time in the past, or we spend time in the future. We spend time thinking about things that happened yesterday or last year, or we think about things that we have to do tonight or tomorrow. And one of the things that we say in the church so often when we're talking about people being in the now is that even as you sit in a church service, you're moving from the present moment into the past, thinking about things that you were called upon to do last week or in the morning, and then you think about things that you're going to do immediately after church. And so no matter where you are, any of us, we need to be aware of the fact that awareness of the present moment and to be in the now is one of the initial steps that brings us into the awareness and the unity with that still small voice, that guidance. And of course, one of the things that we think about often is the still small voice would be our conscience, and the little angel and the devil going
Yeah.
back and forth. But of course, we know in truth that there's only good and good in our lives, and there's only good that is the reality. And so that still small voice within us is good and only good, and it's only the presence of God.
Yes, and if we can remember that it is the presence of God, then we are even more calm and more peaceful, and we don't let things assail us and assail our consciousness. And another thing we need to avoid is thinking of other people and what they ought to have done and ought not to have done, because it's such a waste of time. If it's not constructive, if we're not going straight through to something in a constructive way, then it's totally irrelevant and a waste of time to be thinking what other people should and shouldn't have done, or what they said and didn't say. But just to stay centered within ourselves helps us to avoid scattering our energies in that way. And the more we scatter our energies, then the less calm we're able to be.
Let's talk a little bit about energies. And we talk in New Thought about vibration, and that's a little extension on the idea and the teaching of energy. But everything is energy, isn't it?
Yes, everything is energy, and energy is light, and a lack of energy is darkness, or chaos would then also be darkness. But as we're calm and peaceful, and as we talk with people in a relevant way, then we exude light, and so we know that we're doing the work when we are able to stay calm and peaceful and exude that light. And as we do, our body is energetically sending out that light, and everything is energy, everything is vibration. So as we know that, we can see the beauty of life more fully. Isn't that true?
And we have energy,
Yes.
and we have vitality, and we have strength, and we have health, and that means even in the midst of disease, if that's where we are. And so many times people will say that they're exhausted, that their energy is just is gone. And a part of that process is that we have energy, and that energy is spent on negative emotions and negative thoughts and negative feelings. But in fact, as we attune ourselves, as we center ourselves with that infinite presence, with that, and become attuned to that still small voice, we will be guided and directed. But even more than being guided and directed, we'll operate from a place of peace and a place of strength that will create and recreate energy and vitality in a positive and affirmative way.
Well, in a sense, we can look at our bodies as being energy fields, and the energy enters our body through the top of our head, prana, God's own energy, and through our lungs by way of the oxygen that we inhale and exhale. And that's one reason the deep breathing centers us and helps us so greatly. And if we can remember to breathe deeply all the time, then we're that much farther ahead. And then the magnetic earth energy enters our body through the base chakra, the root chakra at the base of the spine. And so we are comprised of those various energies. And it's said that man is fearfully and wonderfully made, and indeed we are. And isn't it good to know how we function and how our energy is formed? And also, if we can remember that we have control of our energy level, and if we send our energies out in a negative, undesirable way, then we're shorting ourselves on the positive aspect that we could bring into our lives to keeping that energy on a higher level and more positive and light-filled.
And isn't it interesting that our Eastern brothers and sisters have known this for centuries and centuries, and we're just coming to know it in the West and coming to embrace it much more wildly. We'd like to pause at this point in the program and offer you an opportunity to receive some literature so that you can continue to study the ideas and concepts that we're sharing with you.
We would like to give you the opportunity to explore and discover in your own home the new thought teachings that this program is sharing with you by sending you a free copy of one of these booklets. Simply address your request to Confident Living at P.O. Box 7726, Long Beach, California, 90807. Whatever your dream, whatever your vision. You can reach it through confident living.
Before the break, we were talking about the energy centers, and maybe we can spend a few minutes talking about the chakra issue, because, again, for many in the West, it's a new concept and a new idea, but it is a source of vitality, and it is a source of attuning or centering ourselves so that we're able to access the still small voice that we're talking about.
Yes, it is. It's wonderful that the Eastern religions are more prevalent. The beliefs have been incorporated in our Western beliefs, because it makes sense, and we can see that the results of it. And of the seven major chakras, the lowest is the root chakra, located at the base of the spine. And it's been said that our feelings toward our families, our tribe, determines the energy of that root chakra. So whenever we're upset with others in our family or our tribe, then or it could be extended family too, then it would affect that. And then the spleen chakra is the energy center, and energy enters through that spleen chakra, and it's also money, sex, or power. When we're thinking of those issues, then that would be the second chakra. And the third chakra would be our concept of how other people view us. It's not necessarily how they see us, but how we perceive that they see us. And that's the emotional center of the body, and it's located about 1 inch below the navel. And then the heart chakra is located close to the heart, over the thymus gland, and the thymus gland governs our immune system. And so the heart chakra is the chakra, hopefully, of love, but it can be whatever emotion we put into it. And it's the connection between the 3 lower physical chakras and then the 3 higher spiritual centers. And the next is located at the throat center, and they're all located over one of the 7 major endocrine glands. Mm-hmm. And then at the throat center, it's our will that determines that. It's either our will or not my will, but thine be done, oh God, in me and through me. And then the brow chakra would be located just at the center of the forehead, below the center of the forehead, just above the eyebrows. And that is the clairvoyant, when we have clairvoyant vision and we perceive more than is physically visible, it comes through that center. And then the crown chakra, the energy goes up, and that is our connection with Creator God. Mm-hmm. And as we know that our spiritual energies enter through the crown center, then it gives us, sometimes you feel an itching in that top of your head, and you know that it's something active happening there. And the same will be true of the others. But the energies of the root chakra go down, and the energies of the crown chakra at the top of the head go up, and the others go out. But you can see those clairvoyantly, and it's like a little stem and then an open cup or flower that opens, a flower that opens like a cup. And you can see those, and you see the energy. And when people are angry, you see the solar plexus chakra looking red and sending out darts of red energy, dark red energy. Mm-hmm. So even when we're not clairvoyant, we can know that those centers are working, and they're located, if they're located over the 7 major endocrine glands, and they are part of us, of our own individuality.
Mm-hmm. And it's important for people to understand, and of course there are classes and lessons and books and all kinds of things about these life centers, but the importance is that we align ourselves, mm-hmm. and this Eastern technique of aligning chakras mm-hmm. is a technique that's used mm-hmm. as a part of meditation, but it's not the only one. So people don't have to think that they have to do that in order to, but it is a technique, and it's certainly a part of the background of how it is we begin to center ourselves, and more importantly, what happens as we center ourselves. Because as we center ourselves, the physical aspect of our being and the spiritual aspect of our being come together in their proper form, and then the mental aspect is there present in the midst of it, and that mental aspect is where that still small voice communicates.
Yes, and ultimate truth is so simple. We don't have to remember any of the furbelows. We just have to remember that God and I are one. We're centered there, and the still small voice comes to us and through us, and is a part of us, and is created within us. Mm-hmm. And if we can stay calm and peaceful and centered, then nothing else matters.
Mhm. And it's important, too, for us to understand, at least from our philosophical tradition, that there's nothing that we can do to separate ourselves from that
Yes.
presence. And I think that's an important aspect. There may be times in our lives, and there may be persons who seem not to have access to that divine presence or guidance or voice within. But in truth, everyone has it, and it never abandons us. And
Indeed.
even in the worst of situations, when people behave in the most horrific ways, we like to think that they're punished by being separated from this presence. But in fact, God's desire for all of us, regardless of what we do, who we are, where we come from, how we think, how we behave, never changes. And that relationship between the divine presence and ourselves is never severed, except in our understanding.
Yes. And people have been asking questions recently. If God is in everything, is God in the people who are so evil?
Mhm.
Is God in the people who are doing these horrible things? And of course, the answer has to be yes, because God is within every person. And it's the individual who has the choice of acting positive or negative.
Mhm.
And so it's how people use their energies. Everyone has that energy of God within them.
Mhm. And that voice is accessible to everyone.
Exactly.
And once we begin to access it, then our behavior changes, because we, as we said in the beginning of the program, we've aligned ourselves as New Testament Scripture tells us, with the mind of Christ. So we have the mind of Christ. We have the divine mind, and of course, the one thing that He said to us was that He did all things because of the Father within. So it was He was drawing upon that teaching as He was sharing it with us, and that was that His mind and His thinking was aligned with the divine mind of the Father, the Creator, and that voice was speaking to Him always, and He was able to access it. He was able to listen to it. He was able to be guided and directed by it, and He said very clearly that all the things that He did, we could do and more. And so if He could do that, then we can do it and we will do it. And so every one of us will become more and more proficient in accessing this small voice and allowing the inner knowing to guide and direct our way of being.
It's our own choice, and we have that choice. Dr. Carl Jung identified the shadow, which would be the eighth aspect of the individual, and that would be he called it the unredeemed aspect of the person. And in a sense, if we look at life, at other people and ourselves in that light, we can see that, yes, that there is that aspect of being. And the more we exude light, the more we bring light into our lives through our energetic way of being, then the less the shadow is prevalent. And those who have studied the works of Dr. Jung, and more people seem to be studying the Jungian psychology, we can see that it fits in, it fits.
Mhm.
But we don't have to have the shadow be prevalent in our lives.
Mhm.
It's just the prospect is always there.
And we can change our way of thinking
Totally.
about ourselves at any
Totally.
time. And so that redemption or that redeeming reality is always accessible to us.
Yes, and it's our own choice. Isn't it wonderful? Life is truly a series of choices. We can choose to be, as you say so often, we can choose to be happy. We can choose to be sad. We can choose to be a martyr. We can choose to not. We can choose. Whatever we choose will manifest in our lives because that is our choice.
And our thoughts determine
Yes.
the quality of our life. And so if we can draw upon this inner knowing and this intuitive knowing, and of course in New Thought we have a lot of people who explore the opportunities of intuition, and it's an interesting thing, a phenomenon for many people, but I think that we ought to be careful always of getting wrapped up in the phenomenon of being able to be intuitive when in fact the most important aspect of the inner knowing is being guided and directed in the way that we should go, in the actions that we should take, and the things that we should say. Much more importantly than knowing what's going to happen.
Oh, of course. One of the greatest joys of being intuitive is it saves us a lot of time. I started when I was like more than 50 years ago trying to be intuitive, and the more we work at it and try, the more we are. And it does save us a lot of time. It saves us steps and saves us time for putting our energies to other things, because we have a certain amount of energy and we can put it to certain ways. But if we use it to try and impact on other people's lives, then I don't think that's I think that's not a good idea. It's just if we use our intuition to remember where we put something, or to and so forth on a day-to-day basis, just using it for our own use, then it's wonderful.
In the last minute or two that we have, I guess we could talk about what it is people could do to access this inner knowing or the small voice. And I guess the one thing we could say, which we've touched upon, is just simple deep breathing,
Yeah.
and then meditation, centering, quietness, and peace, and ultimately being able to enter the silence.
Yes, the deep breathing would help them to be centered, and to be centered, they would be in attunement. So that's the best advice we could give. But again, it's a conscious choice, and we choose. And as we choose to live a certain way, then it just becomes automatic. It's not like we say, well, I'm going to do this today and I'm going to do that today, emotionally or psychologically. It's just that it becomes a way of life for us.
And that's the key to this still small voice, is
Yes.
to allow it to speak to us so that it really doesn't have to speak to us loudly, but instead that it is a constant guide and direction as to the operation of our mind and the way in which we're dealing with the realities of life. Then it doesn't matter what happens outside us, because what's happening inside us is important.
Yes, indeed. And it doesn't hurt to know that we have an immensity consciousness and use that immensity consciousness. And then we can use that even further to get information and advice. And we can ask questions as we attune ourselves and we listen to the still small voice within. We can ask questions and hear those answers. And so it becomes a way of life for us, so that our life is more peaceful, happy, productive, and all the good things that we would want to accomplish in our lives come more easily and more fully.
And that comes with our changing the way that we think and embracing new ideas and concepts and opening our conscious awareness to that still small voice. And we hope that the information we've shared with you has been useful, and we look forward to seeing you next time.